I remember the sound. The sharp crack tearing through the air, the smell of gunpowder mixed with sweat and adrenaline. It all happened fast, too fast, but somehow it felt like everything moved in slow motion. The entire world went silent the moment my finger pulled the trigger, and I watched a man's life change because of me. That was the day that never left my mind. The day I stopped being just a cop and started carrying the weight of having fired my weapon for the first time on duty. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my hand shaking after the shot, the siren screaming somewhere in the background while my partner stared at me, lost for words. The guy on the ground was bleeding, still alive, and looking at me like I'd just destroyed everything he knew. And maybe I had, because the worst part, he wasn't just another suspect. He was someone I knew, someone who, years ago, had saved my life. And now, I had shot him. Out of duty, out of instinct, out of survival. But the question that's haunted me ever since is, did I really have a choice? Or was that the exact moment I lost a piece of my soul? I always knew that being a cop wasn't just about carrying a gun or wearing a badge. Ever since I was a kid, when my father used to take me to the precinct where he worked, I understood that it was more than a job. It was a burden, a mission. He'd come home late, dark circles under his eyes, sometimes silent for hours. My mom said it was fatigue, but I knew there was more. There was weight on his shoulders, the weight of decisions, of lives, of choices you can't take back. And still, I grew up wanting to be just like him. I wanted to face the world, protect the innocent, make a difference. I joined the police academy at 22, the first in my family to follow in the old man's footsteps. On day one, the instructor shouted at us that the streets don't forgive mistakes, that the difference between going home or becoming a statistic is measured in split seconds. I took that seriously. I was the most focused in the group, never missing a detail, not because I wanted to be the best, but because I was scared of failing, of not being good enough. Deep down, I needed to prove to myself that I had what it takes. After graduation, I was assigned to the night shift in one of the city's most violent areas. Tense patrols, robberies, drug deals, calls that made your blood run cold. Every shift was a spin of the roulette wheel, but I stayed sharp, alert, ready, or so I thought. I had never fired my weapon. I'd drawn it dozens of times, shouted commands, made stops with my hand on the grip, finger on the edge of action, but it always ended without a shot. My colleagues said it was luck. I believed it was training. But now, looking back, I know it was something else. It was fear, a fear that ate at me inside, fear of what would come after pulling the trigger. Because training at the academy, shooting paper targets, that's one thing. Facing a human being in your sights, that's something else. A face, a life, a story. My worldview was simple. Right is right, wrong is wrong. Criminals choose their path. My dad believed that too, and I inherited that rigidity. But the street, it teaches you things aren't so black and white. Some people make bad choices out of desperation. Some kids never had a real chance. Some mothers cry at the station for sons who just wanted to help put food on the table. And that complexity started to affect me. Every call left me more thoughtful, more conflicted. I still believed in law, in order, in justice. But I began to realize that justice isn't always clean, and it's never easy. I had good partners, tough, seasoned guys who'd seen it all. One of them, Sergeant Miller, used to say, "You'll only understand what it means to be a real cop the day you have to shoot. Until then, you're just another guy in uniform." I didn't like hearing that, but he was right. Because on that day, and everything changed. My uniform felt heavier, my mind louder, my heart darker. I was always by the book, respected by my team and the community. But no one sees what we carry inside, the sleepless nights, the faces we try to forget, the questions with no answers. I was the cop who believed in control, in protocol, in logic. But that day, the day I fired my weapon for the first time, I realized none of that prepares you for crossing the line. And once you cross it, there's no going back. It was supposed to be just another routine night. The radio crackled quietly in the background of the patrol car as Miller and I cruised through the east side, headlights slicing through rain-slicked streets. I was driving, focused, while Miller chewed gum like it was the most important thing in the world. He always did that when he sensed something brewing, like chewing could somehow control the chaos. I watched the sidewalks, empty, ghostly, storefronts closed, people hurrying home, like the city was about to devour everything in its path. And maybe it was. It was just after 11 when the radio suddenly flared to life, the dispatcher's voice sharp and urgent. Unit 312, we have an active incident, possible break-in in progress. Suspect may be armed. Location, 1445 Jefferson Avenue. Nearest unit, respond immediately. I glanced at Miller. He was already raising an eyebrow, that look that said it all. Let's move. I grabbed the radio, voice steady. Unit 312 en route, ETA. 3 minutes. The drive to Jefferson Avenue was short, but every second stretched out. As we moved, dispatch gave us more details. An anonymous call from a neighbor, reporting screams from inside the house, the sound of glass breaking, and what might have been a muffled gunshot. Unconfirmed, but the way the dispatcher said it, you could feel the cold crawl up your spine. That street, Jefferson Avenue, had a reputation. Old houses forgotten by time, filled with folks who'd lived there for decades, and some who lived well outside the law. That block had history, and none of it was good. We turned onto Jefferson and spotted the house. 1445. Lights off, run-down facade, gate half open and swaying in the wind. Everything about it felt off. Miller cut the siren. No lights. If someone's inside, I don't want them bolting before we know what's going on. I nodded, parked the cruiser under the shadow of a tree. We grabbed flashlights, checked our vests, hands on holsters, and moved in. As we approached, I tried to focus my mind. Breathe. Remember protocol. Observe, assess, approach safely. But deep down, something felt wrong. That unshakable instinct in your gut, telling you this isn't right. The street was too quiet. No barking dogs, no curious neighbors, no flicker of TVs behind curtains. It was like the whole block was holding its breath. Miller took the right side of the door. I took the left. He motioned for me to sweep the side of the house while he covered the front. I moved slowly, flashlight cutting through the dark, every step echoing in my ears. Then I saw it. Muddy footprints by the side window, and blood. Not much, but fresh, unmistakable. My heart kicked into overdrive. I rushed back to the door and whispered, "Someone's hurt." Blood trail by the window. Miller nodded grimly. We drew our weapons. In that moment, I knew. This night had just changed. The radio crackled again, but I barely heard it. My senses were locked onto the silence inside that house. I thought I heard something. A sob? A breath? Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks. Miller gave the countdown. 3, 2, 1. And right then I felt it. This wasn't just another call. Someone was inside, waiting. And I had no idea that behind that door was a man who would force me to cross a line I could never come back from. The door was ajar. That alone said plenty. Miller gave a quick nod and pushed it slowly, the creak echoing through the dark house like a warning, or maybe a cry. The entryway led into a small living room, cluttered with old furniture covered in dust, the air thick with the stench of mildew. But something was wrong. Something didn't match the abandoned look of the place. A recently used ashtray, a coffee mug still warm on the table, and most unsettling of all, a faint sound coming from deeper inside, like someone trying not to breathe. We stepped lightly inside. The floorboards groaned beneath our feet, and every step felt like a gunshot in the stillness. My finger hovered over the trigger, weapon raised, eyes scanning every shadow. Miller moved ahead, silent and sharp like a blade. Our flashlights cut through the dark, revealing fragments of the scene. Crooked picture frames, torn curtains, papers scattered on the floor, but it didn't look like a break-in. No, it felt lived in, like someone had been here, hiding, surviving, and waiting. In the corner of the room, a half-open door led to a narrow hallway. Miller pointed at me, signaling me to take the left while he covered the right. I swallowed hard and moved forward. The narrow walls felt like they were closing in, the sound of my own breath deafening under the weight of my vest. I reached a slightly open door and nudged it with the barrel of my gun. A bedroom. Small, messy, the bed unmade. On the floor, more blood. Fresh. It had happened recently. Very recently. And then, in the far corner, something that made me freeze. A wallet, tossed near the dresser. I picked it up cautiously, flipped it open, and felt the cold surge through my spine. An ID. The name. It couldn't be. My chest tightened. My vision blurred. And for a second everything tilted. That name. I knew it. The photo. An older version of someone I hadn't seen in years but could never forget. This wasn't random. This house. This night. It was all connected. I shoved the ID into my pocket and returned to the hall, meeting Miller at the kitchen door. He was tense, weapon up, eyes fixed on something on the ground. I followed his gaze. Footprints, barefoot, leading toward a staircase. Blood smeared on the first step, going down. Miller glanced at me, eyes sharp. "This is gonna go bad," he whispered like a prayer. And he was right. That house, that silence, those clues. It felt like we were chasing a ghost, but a ghost who was wounded, cornered, and maybe armed. The tension was unbearable. We descended slowly, flashlights slicing through the narrow staircase. The stench of mildew was replaced by something stronger, iron, blood. The basement was dark, cluttered, littered with boxes, tools, and a mattress thrown in a corner. Then I saw it, a shadow moving. Fast. Miller shouted, "Police! Hands up!" No response, just the scrape of something metallic across the floor. My heart nearly exploded. Time warped again. My hands trembled. Then, a sound, a click, like a weapon being cocked. I didn't think. Instinct took over. I aimed, and that's when I saw the face. Even in the dim light, I saw it clearly, and time stopped. Because that face, I knew it. And in that split second, before anything else could happen, I realized this call was about to change everything. Forever. I froze. Time shattered, slowed, twisted. The figure in front of me wasn't just any threat. He was a piece of my past. For a second, my finger stiffened on the trigger, but my mind screamed in confusion. It was him. It couldn't be, but it was. Same eyes, older, harder, worn, down but unmistakable. And in that fraction of a second before chaos erupted, our eyes locked, and I saw something in his gaze that tore me apart. Fear and recognition. Miller didn't hesitate. He barked commands. "Hands up, now!" But there was no response. The figure hesitated, stepped sideways, and tried to bolt. The noise exploded, crashing boxes, metal clanging, a flash of silver in our flashlight beams. And then everything went to hell. The suspect, he, pulled something from his waistband and spun. Miller reacted first, barely in time. He shouted, "Gun!" and the world blurred. I raised my weapon, aimed, but my hand trembled. I didn't want to shoot. I couldn't. But then came the sound. A gunshot. Not mine. Miller fired and missed. The bullet slammed into the wall, shards flying, the figure dropping behind a workbench. "Shit, he's armed!" Miller yelled, ducking behind cover. "Cover the left, I'll flank him." I was still frozen, torn between the voice of reason and the tidal wave of emotions. But training kicked in. I took a breath, steadied my grip, moved along the wall. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out everything else. The figure appeared again, panting, limping, weapon in hand, aimed straight at Miller. And that was it. That split-second moment where everything became clear. It was him or Miller. Him or me. The streets or the past. And before I could even think, my finger moved. I fired. The sound tore through me. I saw the impact, the body, stagger, collapse, hit the floor with a dull thud. The world fell silent. Miller rushed over, kicked the weapon away, and shouted into the radio, "Suspect down. Need medics. Code red." But I just stood there, staring. The man on the ground, bleeding, groaning, wasn't a stranger. It was Connor Evans, the kid who grew up with me on the streets of Camden, my neighbor, my best friend, my brother from another life. The same Connor who vanished years ago, swallowed by the streets, by bad choices. And now he was lying there, because of me. Miller called my name, but it felt distant. I dropped to my knees beside Connor. He looked up, blood on his lips, trying to speak. "You, Mike?" I nodded, throat tight. He gave a weak, bitter smile. I knew. It was you. The tension wasn't over. Outside, sirens wailed, red and blue lights flickering across the basement walls. But in that cold, dark room, I wasn't a cop anymore. I was just a man, face to face with the weight of everything I thought I knew. I pulled the trigger, for the first time, on the one person I never imagined I'd have in my sights. Backup arrived fast. Tactical protocol, scene secured, area locked down. Miller gave his report over the radio, but I wasn't there. I was still kneeling on that floor, weapon in hand, the sound of the shot echoing in my mind. Nothing could undo what happened, and I knew that night wasn't over. The real storm was just beginning, because what started as a routine call had just become a personal nightmare, and I was right in the middle of it. At the hospital, the hours crawled by like centuries. I sat on a cold bench, still wearing my vest, stained with blood, his blood. My hands were shaking, and it wasn't from adrenaline anymore. It was from everything that came after. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again. The shot, the fall, Connor's eyes recognizing me, his voice. I knew it was you. That wasn't just a sentence. It was an accusation, a memory, a punch to the gut. Miller tried to calm me down. You did what you had to do, Mike. He was gonna kill me. You saved my life. I heard him, but I wasn't really listening. To him, Connor was just another armed suspect. To me, he was a ghost, a piece of my past that had come crashing back covered in blood and secrets. And the worst part, I had no idea why he was there, in that house, armed, wounded, and running. My head spun with questions. What happened to him? Why did he disappear? What led him to that place? And why the hell did he have my name in his pocket? Hours later, a doctor finally came out. He made it. Bullet went clean through the shoulder. He'll survive. I exhaled, a mix of relief and dread. I needed him alive. I needed answers, because what came next was the part I never saw coming. Back at the precinct, I was pulled off the case. Standard procedure after an officer-involved shooting. My weapon was taken. An official statement demanded. Every second of the incident, dissected and recorded. But as I spoke, a part of me was distant, watching the scene like it was happening to someone else. The shot, the blood, Connor's face, they looped endlessly in my mind. The guilt, the confusion, the need to know why. Then the captain called me into his office. Mike, we have a problem. We found something in that basement. My stomach sank. He placed a sealed evidence box on the desk. Inside, documents, photographs, cash, piles of it, envelopes stuffed with bills, hidden behind a false wall in that house. And in the middle, a flash drive. The captain's eyes were cold. What's on this changes everything. You need to see it. He plugged it in. The screen lit up. Videos, surveillance footage from inside the house, transactions, meetings, known criminals, and then something worse. Names, account numbers, financial records, and one name that hit me like a freight train. Stephen H. Mello, my old captain, retired 3 years ago. A man I respected more than anyone. A man who shaped the kind of cop I became. I couldn't process it. Connor wasn't just a fugitive. He was part of something bigger, something that reached deep inside the department. But why? Why collect all this? Why keep it hidden? Then I remembered the wallet. His ID and a slip of paper with my name on it. He'd been looking for me. That house wasn't random. He wanted me there. He waited, not to kill me, but because he knew I'd come, knew I'd listen. Back at the hospital, I went to see him. 2 officers guarded the door. Connor was cuffed to the bed, pale, weak, but awake. When I entered, he turned his head, eyes locked on mine. It had to be you, Mike. Only you. They're everywhere. Couldn't trust anyone else. What the hell is going on, Connor? I asked, voice cracking. He gave a tired, bitter laugh. I fell, Mike. I crossed lines, but I saw things. Things no one's supposed to see. Tried to get out. They wouldn't let me. I gathered proof. Waited for the right time. Figured if anyone would hear me out, it'd be you. And just like that, the shot I fired, the one that almost killed him, now felt like a spark. A spark that ignited a fire that couldn't be put out. The truth was out, and I realized this wasn't an isolated case. It was the beginning of a war, one I was now part of, whether I wanted it or not. Connor dragged me into the darkness, and there was no turning back. I walked out of that hospital room and straight into the parking lot, desperate for air, for silence, for something to make sense. But there wasn't enough air in the world to clear my head. No silence loud enough to drown out the chaos inside me. The world outside kept moving. Cars passing, people going about their lives, unaware, while I stood there sinking deeper into a hole that seemed bottomless. Connor, that name weighed on me like a curse I hadn't realized I'd been carrying for years. We grew up side by side, shared everything, food, dreams, scars. When my dad drank too much and home became a war zone, it was Connor who pulled me out to the streets, made me laugh, helped me breathe. When his mother got sick, my house became his. We were brothers, not by blood, but by survival. Then came the turning point, the choices. I went to the academy. He disappeared into the streets. It started small, petty thefts, nights away from home, and then one day, he was just gone. Months later, he showed up, gaunt, eyes hollow, involved with the wrong people. I tried to save him, pulled him aside, begged him to change. His answer? The world's dirty, Mike. You still believe in that justice crap? Wake up. Those were the last words he said to me, until the night I shot him. And now, after all these years, he's back, armed, wounded, full of secrets. And I pulled the trigger. I did my job, that's what everyone says. But what kind of job demands you shoot someone who once called you family? I didn't know who I was anymore. The badge I once wore with pride felt like it had burned into my skin. The uniform, gone, stripped away. But the weight of it, still there, heavier than ever. Everything I believed in, right, wrong, loyalty, justice, was now a blur of doubts. I kept asking myself, what if I had waited a second longer? What if I hadn't pulled the trigger? Maybe Miller would be dead. Maybe I would be. Or maybe Connor wouldn't be handcuffed to a hospital bed, fighting for his life because of me. Anger boiled inside me. At Connor, for vanishing, for choosing the wrong path. At myself, for not stopping him, for missing the signs. At the system that chews up kids like us and spits them out as either criminals or broken men in uniform. But beneath all that anger was guilt. Thick, choking guilt. A guilt that clung to my skin like tar. His words haunted me. I fell, but I tried to get out. How many fall and never come back? How many try and are dragged deeper? And me, I pulled the trigger before I listened, before I understood. Maybe I had no choice in that moment. Maybe it was him or Miller. But now every heartbeat reminded me of that choice, of the line I crossed. And the worst part? He wasn't lying. The evidence was real. The corruption, the names, the betrayal, all true. Men I admired, trusted, followed, were dirty. They shaped me, mentored me, and all the while, they were rotting inside. I looked back and saw a trail of lies, silence, and convenient forgetfulness. Had I been just another pawn? My mind spiraled. I didn't sleep that night. I replayed the shooting over and over. Miller's shout, the figure in the dark, the shot, Connor's eyes, my finger on the trigger. That instant, the moment everything changed, and I knew nothing I did could erase it. I was torn in two, between law and truth, between the badge and the past, between the cop everyone expected me to be, and the man who now looked in the mirror and hated what he saw. The only thing I knew was that the real storm hadn't hit yet, and somehow I had to find a way through it, or be swallowed whole, because that night I didn't just lose my innocence. I lost my peace, and maybe a part of my soul. The next morning, I sat on the hard bench outside the captain's office, stomach in knots, eyes bloodshot from another sleepless night. Miller was beside me, silent, arms crossed, staring at the floor like he was trying to make sense of the mess we'd unleashed. On the desk inside, Captain Rogers held the preliminary report and his hands, but he wasn't looking at it. He was looking at me. "Mike," he began, voice heavy, "Internal Affairs is already involved. Standard procedure for a shooting. Your record's clean, the shot was justified, and Miller's statement backs it up." I nodded, but none of that mattered to me anymore. The official version would be neat, procedural, but the truth, that was locked in a flash drive, sitting in an evidence locker, or worse, already in the wrong hands. "There's something else," he said, sliding an envelope across the desk. "We received an anonymous tip. Says you and Connor Evans have history, personal history." My blood turned to ice, and that maybe your emotions are compromising your judgment. His voice was calm, but the message was clear. "You're being watched. You're a threat." I left the office on autopilot. Everything around me felt unreal. Connor's words, the names on the list, Miller's presence. It all felt like puzzle pieces from a nightmare I couldn't escape. That's when it hit me. I had two options. Walk away, pretend I saw nothing, or dive headfirst into the fire, risk everything, my career, my freedom, my life, to bring the truth to light. By the end of that day, I made my choice. I went back to the hospital. Connor was awake, more alert, but I could see he was fading. Not just physically, the fight in him was slipping away. When I entered, he didn't look surprised. "They're gonna bury you too, Mike," he said quietly. "If you try to take this further, you're done." I sat beside him. "Why me, Connor? Why did you keep all this for me?" He laughed bitterly. "Because you still believe in something. I lost that a long time ago." Silence hung between us. Then he dropped the bomb. "There's more. The flash drive. That's just the surface. There's a storage unit, a safe. Everything's there. You have to go. Now." The clock was ticking. I could hand it all over, to IA, to the FBI, to anyone, and trust the system, but I didn't trust it anymore. Not after what I'd seen. I knew this went deep, too deep. If I wanted the truth to survive, I had to act alone. That night I drove to the location Connor gave me, an old warehouse on the edge of town, forgotten by time. I parked in the shadows, checked my weapon, now just a backup piece, no badge, no authority, and went in. The place smelled of rust and dust. The storage unit was buried in the back behind stacks of junk. I found the safe, entered the code. It clicked open. Inside, files, photos, hard drives, cash. But what hit me hardest were the names. Officers, judges, politicians, and the biggest of them all, Captain Rogers. I staggered back. My lungs felt tight. My mentor, my leader, the man who molded me into the cop I was. And now I saw him for what he really was, a fraud, a traitor, a cancer. The decision was made. I wasn't backing down. I was done obeying orders, done staying quiet. I was going to blow this open, even if it killed me, because after that shot, there was no going back. And now, it was war. When I walked out of that warehouse, the world wasn't the same anymore, and neither was I. That folder in my hands, with files, photos, videos, names, it weighed more than any weapon I'd ever carried. Every document, every recording, every face on those pages was a ticking bomb. And now, I was holding the detonator. I drove aimlessly at first, trying to figure out the next step. Bring it to internal affairs, the FBI, leak it to the press. Every option was dangerous. But there was something more immediate. I had to get back to the precinct before anyone realized what I'd found. My gut told me I was already being watched. As I pulled into the station parking lot, I noticed two unmarked cars near the side entrance. Men in suits talking quietly, too discreet to be casual. My instincts screamed. They weren't here for paperwork. They were here for me. I went straight to Captain Rogers' office. I needed to see his eyes. I needed confirmation. I knocked, entered. He was on the phone but hung up the second he saw me. His eyes, they weren't the same. No warmth, no brotherhood, just cold calculation. "Mike, sit down." I did, the folder hidden under my jacket, my gun heavy at my waist. He crossed his arms and said, "I know you visited that warehouse, the one linked to Connor Evans." My stomach dropped. He continued, voice calm but laced with steel. "You trust him now? A criminal? You really think you're going to take down the system with some old files?" Silence. He stood, walked around his desk, standing behind me. "You and I both know how this works. You don't want to ruin your life over some fantasy of justice. Be smart." The threat was clear. I was on their radar. This was my chance to walk away, to shut up. But I didn't come this far to run. I stood up, faced him. "If I find out you're involved, I'll bury you." And I left. From that moment, everything shifted. I was pulled from active duty, officially for emotional compromise. My badge and service weapon were taken. I was escorted out the back door like a suspect. Outside, the sky was darkening, and I knew the storm hadn't even started. That night, I got a phone call, blocked number. A voice I didn't recognize, distorted. "We know what you took, Mike. Give it back or we'll take it from you." Then silence. I froze. They were watching. They knew my name, my moves, and they weren't bluffing. I went home only to grab essentials. I stashed the evidence, somewhere safe, somewhere no one would find it. And I disappeared, because now I wasn't just a threat. I was a target, and I wasn't going to make it easy for them. But then came the blow I wasn't ready for. I went back to the hospital to check on Connor, and I saw it. Flashing lights, medics rushing inside. I ran, but was stopped at the door. A cop held me back. Someone tried to kill him, pretended to be staff. He's alive, but barely. He's in a coma. The world collapsed around me. Shouted, fought to get in, but they held me back. Connor was the only one who could confirm everything, and now they'd silenced him. The message was clear. I had crossed the line, and now I was at war with something much bigger than I imagined. I had the truth, but the cost was only just beginning. That night I sat on a cold hospital bench, the steady beep of heart monitors echoing down the sterile hallway. Connor lay in a coma just a few doors away, and I was lost. No badge, no backup, no plan. Just the weight of a secret that could burn the city to the ground, and a target on my back. I kept staring at the floor, wondering if I'd already gone too far, if I should have walked away. But it was too late for that. The fire was already lit, and that's when Miller showed up. He didn't say a word at first, just sat beside me, tense, like a man sitting on a ticking bomb. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "They're watching me too, Mike. Since you got pulled, they're digging, asking questions. Someone's scared." I looked at him, surprised. "So why are you here?" He glanced around, lowered his voice. "Because I saw what you saw." I didn't understand at first. Then he pulled something from his pocket, a small SD card. I made a copy of the flash drive. When they logged it into evidence, I slipped this from the system. Figured you might need it. Figured I might need it. I took it like it was made of glass. "Why now?" I asked. He sighed. "Because I've been following orders my whole life, pretending not to see what was right in front of me. I thought following the rules meant doing the right thing. But now, I don't know what's right anymore. Except this." Then he dropped another bomb. "Connor wasn't just running, Mike. He was trying to meet someone. A reporter. Calls himself Stone. Big investigative guy. Took down 2 politicians last year. Connor was working with him. That's why he had the files. That's why he wanted you." My mind raced. Stone. Of course. The only way out was through the media. Through the truth. "Do you know how to find him?" Miller nodded. "He shows up at a bar downtown every Friday. Keeps a low profile. Tonight's Friday. It was now or never." Hours later, Miller and I walked into a run-down bar, the kind where no one asks questions. In the back, a man sat alone, scribbling in a notebook. Miller pointed. "That's him." I approached, heart pounding. "Stone?" He looked up, cautious. "Depends. Who's asking?" I showed him the SD card. "I've got something that'll blow the lid off this city." He stared at me, then motioned to sit. For 2 hours we laid everything out. The shooting, the evidence, the names, the captain. Stone barely spoke, just listened, taking notes. When we finished, he asked one question. "You ready to be hunted?" I didn't hesitate. "Already am." He nodded, taking the card. "This will go public. Fast. Once I push publish, there's no going back." I stood. "Then let's do it. Let's bring them down." That conversation changed everything. Miller and I weren't alone anymore. We had the truth, and now, a way to expose it. The system would come for us, but we weren't running. Because when you're staring into the heart of corruption, you have 2 choices: stay silent or fight. And we were ready for war. That next night, I drove aimlessly through the empty streets, the city lights flickering like ghosts in the rearview mirror. Rain tapped against the windshield, soft but relentless, like the thoughts pounding inside my head. Every building, every alley, every flashing stoplight felt different now. Familiar but tainted. I was no longer just another cop on patrol. I was a man marked by truth, and hunted for it. I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened in the past few days. The shot I fired, the blood, Connor's face, the betrayal, the files. The city hadn't changed, but I had. Forever. That shot didn't just open fire on a suspect. It opened a door I could never close again. I used to believe in clear lines, right and wrong, law and order. But now, all I saw was gray. A battlefield of silence and shadows, where doing the right thing meant breaking the very rules I once swore to uphold. I thought about my father, the man who taught me to respect the badge, to believe in justice, to walk the line. He died thinking he served something noble. Would he be proud of me now? Or horrified? I wasn't sure anymore. Because the truth is, I didn't just lose my job. I lost my faith. In the system. In the people who built it. In the shield I used to wear like armor. I also thought about Connor, lying unconscious in that hospital bed. A man destroyed by the same system I once trusted. We both made choices. We both crossed lines. But maybe the biggest difference was that Connor stopped believing, and I kept lying to myself that things could be fixed. Until now. Stone's words echoed in my head. "Are you seeking justice or revenge?" I told him I wanted the truth. But maybe it was more than that. Maybe I needed to be free of it all. The lies, the weight, the guilt. I needed to find out who I really was when the badge was stripped away. And now, I finally knew. I wasn't just a cop anymore. I was something else. A man willing to burn down the rot even if it meant turning everything to ash. Because truth matters. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. I pulled over to the side of the road and sat in silence. The rain drumming on the roof like a slow heartbeat. I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of losing everything, not of dying. The only fear I had left was living with myself if I walked away. I picked up my phone and called Stone. "Run the story," I said. "All of it, no redactions." He paused. "You understand what happens next?" I looked out at the city, my city, and felt something I hadn't felt in days. Clarity. "Let them come," I said. That was my moment of transformation. I wasn't the same man who started that shift, gun holstered, badge polished, believing in rules. That man died when I pulled the trigger. What remained was someone who finally saw things as they really were. Raw, broken, but still worth fighting for. Connor had fallen. I had fallen. But somehow, in the fire and the blood, we both reached for something better. And maybe, just maybe, that was redemption. The road ahead was dangerous, uncertain, but for the first time, I was finally free, and I was ready to finish what I started. Next morning, everything exploded. At 6 a.m., Stone published the story. It wasn't just a report, it was a bombshell. The headline in bold letters read, "Corruption inside the police force. Captain Rogers linked to multi-million-dollar criminal network." The evidence was all there. Videos, audio recordings, financial documents, names, dates, bank accounts. And at the heart of it all, a recorded confession from Connor, made months earlier, detailing everything he had witnessed, everything he had done, and the people who tried to bury it. The fallout was instant. News stations broke into their programming. The mayor held a rushed press conference. The chief of police announced an emergency investigation. Internal affairs was activated at full force. Warrants were issued. Patrol cars were sent to Captain Rogers' house, but he was already gone, vanished, just like the ghost he truly was. I watched all of it unfold from a distance, standing next to Miller outside a diner. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Every image on the TV screen, every reporter's voice confirmed what we already knew. The truth was out, and with it came a war. The department reacted fast. Some officers were suspended, others arrested, but the real power players, the ones pulling the strings, either disappeared or went underground. The streets buzzed with rumors that the network reached higher, deeper, beyond the department, that this was just the beginning. Soon after, I was summoned, not to return to duty, but to testify. I spent hours in a cold gray room recounting every detail. The shooting, the house, the files, the threats, the warehouse. It all went on record. I wasn't seen as a hero. I was a liability. A man who broke rank, exposed the rot, and lived to tell about it. They didn't know what to do with me. Internal affairs ruled the shooting justified. Miller's statement, the body cam footage, the evidence, it all backed me up. No charges. But I wasn't reinstated. That was their silent punishment. No badge, no uniform, no place in the brotherhood I once trusted. I walked out of the station not as Officer Michael Raines, but just Mike, a man who now lived in the aftermath. Connor woke from his coma a few days later, weak, but alive. I visited him one last time. His eyes, still sharp, met mine as I entered. "You did it?" he asked, voice raspy. I nodded. "You gave me the path," I said. He didn't smile. He just sighed, eyes distant. Maybe there's still a chance for us after all. There were no grand reconciliations, no easy forgiveness, just understanding between two men who fell, who crossed lines, and survived. As I left the hospital, I didn't know what the future held. My badge, gone. My career, over. But I wasn't empty. For the first time in years, I felt clean, like I had done what needed to be done, like the city, broken as it was, had been given a chance to heal, however small. The official report closed the case with cold precision. Suspect, injured in line of duty. Evidence led to dismantling of corrupt network. Officer discharged under administrative review. But to me, that paper didn't tell the real story. The real conclusion was in the eyes of the people on the streets, in the headlines, in the silence of the precinct halls. It was in Connor's survival, in Miller's courage, in my own transformation. That case didn't just end with an arrest, it ended with the truth, a truth that couldn't be silenced. And I knew, as I walked away, that the city would never be the same, and neither would I. Some nights I still wake up to the sound of that gunshot echoing in my mind, the smell of gunpowder, the blood on the floor, Connor's face as he realized it was me. It all comes rushing back, like it's happening again. And in those quiet, sleepless hours, I ask myself the same question. If I could go back, Would I do it all over again? The answer is never easy. The truth is, after that night, I never found peace. Not the kind, I used to know. That peace you get from believing the world is black and white, that the good guys win if they follow the rules. I lived like that for years. I believed in the badge, in the system, in the chain of command. But the truth is, real justice lives in the gray, in the dirt, in the silence, in the decisions no one wants to make. I lost my career. I lost friends. I lost the comfort of believing I was part of something noble, but I gained something else, something that matters more than any badge, clarity. I saw the machine for what it really was, and I chose to step out of it. Connor survived. Barely. He took a deal, testified, gave names, exposed everything. He knows there's no erasing his past. He won't get redemption from everyone, but maybe in the end he earned a piece of it. Not just for what he revealed, but for trusting me to finish what he couldn't. Miller went back to work. Slowly, carefully. He's still trying to fix things from inside. We talk now and then, just enough to know we're still standing, still fighting in our own ways. Stone's story went viral. It became a documentary, a national scandal. He got death threats, lawsuits, the usual. But he told me once, this wasn't just a scoop. This was the kind of truth people are afraid to see. And you gave it to them. As for me, I've found a new path. I speak at schools, at community centers, to kids who don't trust cops, who don't believe in justice. I tell them the truth, raw, unfiltered. I tell them that doing the right thing doesn't make you a hero. Sometimes it makes you a target, but it also makes you free. Here's what I've learned. Your conscience is all you really have. The world will try to buy it, break it, bend it, but in the end, when the lights are off and it's just you and your reflection, that's what matters, that's what's real. Some people think pulling that trigger changed everything, but the real change happened after, when I stood in the rubble, stripped of the uniform and chose to fight anyway. Not because I had to, because I needed to, for the truth, for Connor, for the people who still believe justice is worth chasing. So no, this story isn't just about a shot fired. It's about the moment you realize the line between right and wrong is razor thin, and crossing it changes everything. Subscribe to the channel now if you want to hear more emotional real-life stories from police officers, and drop a comment below. Which part of this story hit you the hardest? It could be a memory, a dilemma, a single line, anything. I read every single comment, and I promise you, it's in your voices that this mission continues. I'll see you in the next episode.